We're now on the third floor at the Ford's Theater Center for Education and Leadership in what they call the Legacy Gallery. This is an interesting space for teachers. This is where they're trying to introduce students to the idea that a leader's legacy changes over time, that people can use it for their own purposes. And they do it in two ways. They look at images of Lincoln over time, and they look at his words in our hands today. So first, let's talk about images. Lincoln's image in the immediate aftermath of his assassination, in the decades after his death, became one that was in the hands of sculptors and painters who were celebrating his legacy. Some emphasizing his role as the great emancipator, others emphasizing his legacy as savior of the Union. This is something Lincoln might have appreciated. He always, as a politician, cared about his image. He was one of the most photographed men of his era. He sat for paintings. He sat for sculptures. There were life masks taken of him. Lincoln, in fact, had a famous exchange with an 11-year-old girl named Grace Bedell in the middle of the 1860 campaign, where she advised him to grow whiskers because his face was so thin. That's how we get the famous Lincoln beard. Abraham Lincoln cared about his image, and his image mattered to post-war Americans straight through into the 20th century. And what this gallery features, and what it does a powerful job of explaining, is how that famous temple to his image, the Lincoln Memorial, was created and developed in the early 20th century, and how it was dedicated in 1922 with the Gettysburg Address on one wall and the second inaugural on the other as a kind of temple to the American civil religion. But what was fascinating about that moment, what was disturbing in some ways, was that the audience at the dedication was segregated. For a man who had talked about equality and freedom, for a man who had helped destroy slavery, that must have been a disturbing legacy to contemplate. And yet, the people who created that memorial, who thought they were living up to his inspiration, they didn't control the image of the memorial. It changed and evolved over time. People eventually turned it into a platform for civil rights protests. The Lincoln Memorial is one of the great backdrops for the American civil rights movement, and not just for race relations, but for all American protests in the 20th century. It seems that sooner or later, anyone who's lobbying for new rights or more attention to certain key issues, they come before Lincoln and they appeal to the American people. Now, Lincoln's not only a memorial and a statue and an inspiration for rights protesters, he's also sometimes a salesman. His image, as this gallery shows so well, is used in the 19th and 20th century to sell toys. It adorns magazines. It becomes the subject of Hollywood movies. Lincoln's on the penny. He's at Mount Rushmore. He is part and parcel of American popular culture. And that's an important element for students to consider as well. How does the popular celebration of Lincoln, the enduring fascination with Lincoln and his image, what does that say about American culture in general? Now, finally, what I think they do here in this gallery that's as exciting for me as a teacher as anything is they've created something called the Unfinished Work, a remix of Lincoln's words. It's a video wall of actors and musicians talking about Lincoln's words, using statements from his great speeches, but remixing them into a new collage, something that creates a new experience. This is something any one of us could do. With the technology of the 21st century, we can create a remix of Lincoln's words and make them relevant to us today. This is something our students should feel empowered to do, and what this gallery helps explore and explain as a platform for a renewed thinking about Lincoln's legacy.